In this video today, we're going to be looking at doing quadratic regressions with the TI-84 calculator. The first thing that you want to do when you're asked to either find an equation or to make a prediction, I'm using the data that you have, and it tells you that it's quadratic. Is step one, you want to go to stat on your calculator. So I'm going to put my calculator right up here, and I'm going to hit the stat button. That's right over here to the right of alpha. So on, hit stat. Then step two, notice it says click enter and add in your x values in the L1 column and your y values in the L2 column. So I'm going to hit enter on my calculator. Notice I already have some data inside of my spreadsheet, so I am going to go ahead and delete it. So I'm going to hit delete a few times just to get that data out. Now I'm going to move it over. Notice that our x values are all going in our L1 column, the one on the left, just like the x is on the left. And I'll just type those in. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, and 30. Now once I'm finished doing that, I'm going to add my y values in the L2 section. Notice that this has a comma in it, which is very common when you're doing quadratic regressions, but do not try to put a comma inside your calculator. Simply put the values 1, 3, 5, 3. And then the next number without any commas. Now the only thing you would put in there is if any of those were a decimal, you can put a decimal in there, but you don't put any commas. So we'll do 3, 2, 3, and then we'll do 3940 and 4313, and last of all 4440. Right, so we notice I used every point that was given to me. Very important when you're doing a quadratic regression that you use all the values. Don't just use a few of them because it'll come out wrong. You need to use every single bit of data that they provide to you. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to go to the next step. So notice on step 3 it tells you that it's going to have you click stat, and then after stat you're going to click the right button to go to calc. So let's go ahead and do that right quick. So I'm going to go ahead and hit stat. It takes me out of my menu, and then I'm going to click to the right to go to calc, and then from there I am going to go ahead and click down until I get to option 5, quad reg, which just means quadratic regression. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter, and notice it gives me these values here, and it tells me that A is equal to negative 4.9, B is equal to 294.9, and C is equal to 0.4. Now the important thing here is that once you get this information right, we can go ahead and write out our equation. However, you want to make sure that when you're writing the equation, you're allocating these values to the proper letter inside of it. And in this particular one, notice that it is in standard form. And when I say standard form, in other words, it looks like this: ax squared, and then plus bx, and plus c. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to replace those values because that's our next step. If we move up here to step 4, notice it says write your equation using 3 decimal places and don't worry about rounding. So what I found is that if you're trying to make a prediction, in every test I've ever seen, typically if you just write 3 decimal places past the decimal to the right, everything's going to come out correct. So let's start off with the first one. Alright, so I'm going to bring down my x squared real quick. And if I put my calculator back up here, notice before x squared is my a value, and here it says a is negative 4.9. So I'm going to write that in. So negative 4.9. Now the next number is going to be our b value, and our b value says it's 294.991. So I'm going to write that down, and it is a positive value. So I'm going to put plus because it's positive, 294.991. So there's my 3 decimal places past the decimal to the right, and then we're going to go ahead and put our x there. Last, we have to go ahead and put c. Now c is going to be equal to 0.400. So I'm going to put plus 0.400. Once again, 3 decimal places are written. So now I'm done. This is the equation, and if it was asking you to give the equation, this is what you would give. On the other hand, if it was telling you to make a prediction, and let me just give you an example. Let's say that these X values represent weeks. And so at the 30th week, a person has $4,440 in their bank account. And let's say they told you, well, how much money are they going to have on the 35th week? So there's two ways that you could address that if that were to be the question. One is you could come back over, clear this out, go to calculate, and you could type in your newly found equation. And in place of X, you would just put 35 for your X value, because that would be the 35th week. So parenthesis 35, close, and then I'm going to square it, plus 294.991, and then for this X, I'm going to put 35 again, because we're looking for the 35th week, plus 0.400. Hit enter, and it tells me there would be $4,322.58 at that time, following this data, this regression. Another way you could do it is you could actually go to graph, hit y equals, and you could type in this equation and hit second and table to just look at the table values. You'll still get the same answer, right? There's just two different ways to do it. So I'm going to type this in real quick. So I have negative 4.9, and then I'm going to go ahead and put my X squared and plus 294.991 plus, I'll put an X after it, and then plus 0.400 and hit graph. Now I really don't care about the picture. What I want to see is the table. So I'm going to hit second and graph for table. And I'm going to go down to 35. And if you look, these numbers are going to be really close. Like for instance, at 10, it should have been 2,460. Notice at 10, it's 2,460. Right? If I go to 25, 4,313. So I'm going to go all the way down to 25. And notice it's really close, right? 4,312 versus 4,313. So this allows you to make predictions on future outcomes when given a certain input. So I'm going to go to 35. Let's say that's what it's asked for. And it's the same number, right? 4,322.6. So that's how you create a linear regression based on data that's given to you in a table, and how you can use it to make a prediction for a future outcome.